Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something that, well, it really kind of blew my mind. We're looking at this blend of ancient astrological ideas and this almost fantastical story of historical disruption. How do these fit together? So our mission here is to unpack that. We've got a contemporary astrological forecast. It's for July 23, 2025, and we're sitting alongside this really key story from back in 1899 known as the Concord Break. We want to see how these maybe shed light on each other, looking at cosmic influences, human innovation, and asking, well, what happens when you try to be both charmingly disruptive and true to yourself? Okay, so let's start with the astrology for July 23rd, 2025. The forecast mentions things like restless creative energy, genius even, but maybe some crossed wires too. The general vibe seems to be, motivation clashing with feelings. Emotions are running high. And the advice, it's basically, don't make huge decisions today. Let feelings settle. Let curiosity guide you. Sounds like a day with, well, a lot of unexpected possibilities buzzing around.
It really does. And the planetary stuff, it mirrors that perfectly. You've got, for instance, Sun sextile Uranus. That aspect, it's like, bang, a flash of inspiration. You suddenly want to ditch the usual routine, try something totally different. It's often called a creative wormhole, sort of pulling you toward the unexpected path. You get that buzz, that excitement about what could be. It encourages being adaptable, playful, even a bit disruptive, but, with charm. But then, it runs right up against Venus square Mars,
Yeah.
and that's the core tension. This aspect is like being pulled in two directions. You want harmony, you want things to be peaceful, maybe in a relationship, or just generally. But at the same time, there's this need to stand up for what you believe in, to fight for your truth, even if it rocks the boat. The heart wants peace, right? But the spirit demands authenticity. People might feel more competitive, maybe a bit critical.
Right, that tension, wanting passion but also comfort, desire versus diplomacy. Yeah, it feels, I mean, that's pretty universal, isn't it? But what's the real danger if we ignore one side? Do you just end up exploding later, or do you kind of just
Yeah.
give up on what you really want?
Exactly. And the astrology isn't just flagging the problem, it's pointing to the potential within that tension. It's saying, look, if you navigate this carefully, real creative breakthroughs can happen. It's not really about picking one over the other. It's more about understanding that both needs for peace and for truth are valid. Sometimes that very clash, that friction is exactly what sparks something new. Maybe the most honest thing is just letting both desires breathe, giving them space.
Okay, but let's take this out of the abstract. What if these, cosmic vibes, these tensions, what if they actually manifested, like, really powerfully in history? So let's jump back. Fall of 1899. Queen Victoria's reign is winding down. And apparently something really strange happened, something that fractured time itself. In a way, this is a story they call the Concord Break. And it starts, interestingly, not with some big political event, but in a lab. Brighton, I think. We meet this figure, Dr. Seraphine Vale. She was a physicist, half Scottish, half Corsican. The Royal Society had apparently dismissed her for her work on temporal resonance. Sounds pretty out there. But Seraphine, she discovered something amazing. She called it the Concord Wormhole. Now, this wasn't like H.G. Wells, not time travel forward or back. It supposedly led sideways to, quote, divergent branches or potential reigned over predictability. Imagine that reality branching off.
And here's the kicker, connecting right back to our astrology. Seraphine apparently chose to open this wormhole on a night with a very specific alignment. A Venus-Mars square. Exactly the kind of energy astrologers back then were warning about, saying it would strain relationships, bring buried truths bubbling up. It really shows how she was working, doesn't it? Not just cold equations, there was deep intuition involved, too. Performing this act during this moment of, like, peak cosmic friction.
Wow, so what actually happened when she opened it? Was it like an explosion or just subtle?
Oh, far from subtle. The accounts say it burst open like a flower of light right there in her observatory. A visible thing, almost celebratory. People apparently heard her laughter, described it like music. Can you imagine? The pure sound of discovery in the air itself, it shimmered with colors unknown to nature, wild. And afterwards, she left behind her journals and this crystalline dial etched with just 3 words: charm, disrupt, create. Echoes that astrological advice, doesn't it?
Charm, disrupt, create. Okay, so what happened next? Did the world notice? 6 months later, apparently, the news was everywhere. Spread like wildfire, they say. And the world entered this phase. They called it the Concord Break. An age of creative unpredictability. We get these amazing examples, like artists in Paris suddenly painting in multidimensional colors. What does that even mean? Maybe art that played with perception itself, and operas in Vienna with notes that made people weep uncontrollably, music hitting some deep, raw nerve. Then inventors in New York making machines that didn't run on gears, but on imagination. Imagination. It's like reality itself got a creative upgrade. Gloriously chaotic, as you said.
But that kind of radical shift, it always meets resistance. Always. And sure enough, this group pops up, the Order of the Fixed Flame. Sounds ominous. They were basically a coalition of industrialists, traditionalists from all over Europe, and they declared these Concordian influences dangerous. Their whole thing was, progress must be linear, disruption must serve discipline, order above all.
Progress must be linear. That's interesting. They weren't just saying no, they were trying to define what progress is. But if progress has to be linear step by step, doesn't that kill the very possibility of these kinds of breakthroughs, these leaps of imagination?
Absolutely. It's the core conflict right there. It apparently ripped through society, fractured alliances, relationships, even broke apart old ways of thinking. Everyone wanted peace, wanted stability, but nobody wanted to give up their version of truth, their new potential. It's that Venus-Mars square playing out on a global scale, harmony versus authenticity. But then another group emerges, the Concord Council. Described as a ragtag alliance of visionaries, love that, and their leader, a former Persian poet named Amari Kane, he said something really profound. Harmony without honesty is tyranny with perfume. Wow. He urged people to, quote, argue beautifully and fight with kindness. And their solution? Incredible. They built this hall of discourse in Marrakesh. Get this, it had no walls, just veils of light and sound. Diplomats apparently sang their terms. Disagreements were sculpted in sand, only to be wiped away at dawn. A whole new way to disagree.
Singing terms, sculpting disagreements, that's incredibly creative in itself. Using art to mediate conflict. It allowed people to be honest, to express their truth, but within a structure designed for, well, not destroying each other. And the result, they actually signed the world's first treaty of creative competition, which essentially allowed for tension, for disagreement, but without descending into war or destruction. Amazing. So fast forward a bit. By 1907, that's only, 8 years after the wormhole opened? The world had apparently shifted beyond recognition. We get hints like horse-drawn carriages powered by sunlight and tension. I mean, what does that look like in practice?
It's hard to fully picture, isn't it? But the changes went deep, even into personal lives. Relationships, for example. Imagine this. New rituals. Rituals of transparency. Lovers apparently carried mirrors, not for vanity, but to reflect on their own words as they spoke. And they often spoke through poetry, trying to avoid hurting each other with, raw speech, trying to combine honesty with care. It sounds almost utopian in a way. And think about education. Children were being taught charm and disruption as twin virtues. Imagine that curriculum.
Wow. So it wasn't just technology or politics. It was a fundamental shift in how people related to each other, how they understood virtue itself. Teaching disruption and charm. That's a fascinating balance. But what about Dr. Vale, Seraphine? What happened to her amidst all this change she unleashed?
Well, her fate seems to be part of the mystery. Nobody really knew. Some stories claim she, came back through the wormhole, disguised as a fortune teller, maybe whispering ideas into the eyes of powerful people. Others believe she actually became part of the wormhole, like the essence of unexpected possibility itself. Yeah, her personal story fades into legend, but what everyone did seem to agree on, the big takeaway from that whole era, was this. The moment humanity collectively decided to allow both things, the heart's deep yearning for peace and the spirit's fierce demand for truth, that's when the old world just broke open. Gloriously, chaotically, creatively. It shows that maybe this friction we feel, this push and pull, isn't a design flaw. Maybe it's the engine of real transformation.
So bringing it back to today and to that July 2025 forecast, it's pretty striking, isn't it? How that forecast, talking about restless creativity, misread signals, the tension between harmony and truth, how strongly it echoes this incredible story from 1899. It really highlights that timeless struggle, that balancing act between our desire for peace and quiet and our absolute need to be authentic, to live our truth.
It really does. And that raises a really important question, I think, for you listening. How might acknowledging your own desires for both peace and truth, even when they seem to conflict, how might that lead to your own kinds of creative disruption? Where are the places in your life, or maybe in the world around you, where a little bit of charming disruption might be needed? Where are your own potential conquered wormholes?
Yeah. So as you navigate your own life, those everyday tensions between staying comfortable and following curiosity, between keeping the peace and speaking your truth. Maybe remember this story, remember the lessons from 1899 and that wisdom from the stars for today. Sometimes maybe the most honest, the most creative thing we can do is just let curiosity lead and just embrace the beautiful, maybe messy, chaotic, but ultimately creative possibilities that open up when we do.